Hello everybody, I'd like to welcome you to this virtual presentation of Your Brain and You. It's going to provide you with some information around how your brain works, how to take care of your brain, and how brain music therapy fits into this whole scheme. So you really do understand, first of all, what you can do for yourself and also the benefits that you can derive by using specific applications of brain technologies such as brain music therapy. So the first thing I like to do whenever I'm talking about something like this is really get a sense of an analogy for our brain. And the analogy I always like to use is, how is our brain like a computer? We're all familiar with computers. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're sitting in front of one. So let's just talk a little bit about this. Well, the first thing you want to take a look at is, if we've got a computer in front of us, it has different aspects to it. And so let's take a look at this and say, okay, if you've got, say, for instance, your central processing unit, that box that's sitting down there on the floor on your desk, that's kind of like your brain. And your brain, in this mysterious box, has two main components to it. One part is the hardware, and so that would be like your central processing unit. That would also be like your hard drive. Those are the two main things. So if we think of your central processing unit as really being that part of your brain which is logical and linear and figures problems out, and is, in a sense, from a psychological perspective, perhaps your conscious mind. And then there's also your hard drive, and your hard drive, which has a much larger capacity than your CPU, is known as the unconscious mind in psychological terms. And so you've got your conscious mind and your unconscious mind working together, and what they're working with is they're producing results based on the programming that's on that hard drive and is being run by your central processing unit. Well, those programs for us are known as our belief systems, our values, and our skills. So a belief system is basically your belief about how the world works. Your values are those things which are most important to you, that you hold near and dear, and also how you achieve them. So for instance, if happiness is something that's really important to you, how is it that you achieve happiness? How is it that you know when you're happy? And of course we have our skill sets, which are the things that we bring with us, whether it's computer programming or how to build a house or how to draw a beautiful picture. These are all skills that we have. So that's what's happening in our brain, if you will. Now we've also got our output system. Now for human beings, our output system is our motor system. So we walk with our legs, we manipulate things with our hands and our arms, and we get around. That is our behavioral system. That's like the screen of the computer. We also have our input system, so our five senses. Some people would argue that we have six, and that's certainly quite a possibility as well. Well, that's a lot like the keyboard and mouse of the computer. So during this presentation, you're going to hear me referring back and forth to this analogy so that people can really get a clearer idea of what brain music therapy is all about and how this works. I always find when we use an analogy with something as complex as the central nervous system that it just helps us all understand and get on the same page about what things are doing. So with that said, you want to realize in our brain it's really composed of three brains. We call this the brain triune. The first part of our brain is the reptilian part of our brain. It's our brain stem. It is keyed up for survival. That is those things which allow us to keep on going. So everything from breathing and heart rate and digestion to what we call the 4 F's of survival, which are fight, flight, feeding, and reproduction. So when we are in those places where we feel one of those 4 things is threatened, we go what we call reptilian. It's our brain's way of getting into very protective mode. Unfortunately, the reptilian, while it's very protective, isn't that smart. It can't project itself out into time. It deals with very immediate survival-oriented issues. Our second brain is our mammalian brain. It deals with emotions. So, as you know, for those of us with pets, you can know that our pets really do have emotion. They show love, they show affection, they show warmth towards us, they will show anger, all sorts of things. So that part of our system, which is known as the limbic system, is our mammalian brain. In this part of our brain, when we're in a good mood, when we're feeling in a good state, positive emotions, really allows us to not only enjoy those things, but allows us to access our third brain, which is our newest brain called the neocortex. This is our thinking brain. This is the brain that has self-awareness. It's the brain, when you look on the outside of the brain, you see all those convolutions. It's that part of the brain. So this part of our brain has self-awareness. It's also the part of our brain that allows us to plan. So it's the part that's aware of time. It's the part that's aware of 5 years ago. It's the part that can think about 5 years from now. The mammalian brain's really locked into about a 5 or 10 minute time span, and the reptilian doesn't even manage that. It's good for about 30 seconds to a minute. So as you can see, as we move up that scale, we get a little more sophisticated, we get more self-aware. The interesting thing that happens, though, is there's lots of communication between these three brains. And each of the lower brains has the capacity to shut off the brains above it. So when we are locked into a fight or flight survival situation, the reptilian brain takes over and essentially shuts off a lot of the activity of the mammalian and neocortex brains. Likewise, if we're in a highly charged emotional situation, we don't think so clearly. If you can think back to the last time either you were really upset or perhaps you were in love, you'll know that both of those conditions, very charged emotion conditions, really don't do much for our thinking. In fact, they tend to shut off our thinking abilities. So to have an awareness even of that when you or somebody else is engaged either in reptilian or mammalian mode, to expect them to think clearly really isn't that realistic. And so to know that when they are in those places, there's certain things you can do to help take the charge, help those areas calm down, so that you can actually sit down and have a good, solid, rational discussion with these people, particularly in these situations that perhaps are emotionally charged. So taking a look at these three brains, again, they have this interaction, they have this dance with one another that is truly remarkable and really will affect the quality of our life. When they're dancing well together, if you will, then things go very smoothly. Our life is good. When there's conflict between them, it can create all sorts of problems. Not totally unlike having a virus on your computer. It may still work, but there's so many glitches it can just really create all sorts of issues. So how do you take care of the different layers of your brain? Well, first let's talk about feeding your reptile. There's a few things. The first thing you want to do for yourself is create a safe environment that's free of real and perceived threats. Our reptilian brain reacts not only to real threats, such as like a predator in the room or perhaps a bus bearing down on you, but also perceived threats, threats of possible confrontation or what we would perceive as possible confrontation. So to realize that, you really want to take a chance to look at how is my environment arranged? Is it in a place where I feel safe and at home? Not only your living arrangements, but also your working arrangements. And if you're a teacher or a boss or a person in authority, you need to also ask yourself, am I creating a safe environment for the people who work for me? Because people work better and work smarter when they're in an environment that is safe and free of real and perceived threats. You of course want to be well fed and rested. While that may seem obvious, for a lot of us in our busy schedules and our busy lifestyles, we often get food on the go, don't get enough sleep, and this really does create issues with the brain stem, with that reptilian part of our brain. So make sure you're eating food that supports your body and is healthy. Make sure you're getting that important 7 to 8 hours rest every night. When you do that, it goes a long way to increasing the functioning of your central nervous system. Now the next thing is, whenever we're in an adrenaline situation, right, where there's some fight or flight involved, we feel threatened, our body releases a huge